Everybody, happy Monday evening, and welcome to another episode of the WrestleWatch podcast, the only podcast where we discuss free agency in the world of professional wrestling. I am Ryan. We are joined by Doug and Luke. How's everybody doing tonight?
It's a lovely Monday.
Yeah?
Nothing going on. I just got home and relaxing, cooking dinner. So while it's cooking, I'm gonna talk some wrestling.
What's on the stove, or what are you doing?
I got a couple things. I got some corn on the cob that I'm about to heat up on the stove, and then I have the some Stouffer's grandma's vegetable bake that I have in the air fryer, and that's probably good for now. So that'll be done in about an hour.
Cool.
All right.
Uh,
So
Luke, how are you doing?
Doing all right. Winding down after, long day of work. So got home a little while ago. Just taking it easy. Not too much to report on my end. I already ate to dinner, so ready to just jump in and talk what we need to talk about because there is a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
Yes.
and just for that matter, Doug, you usually are the one with the big read here about what we do here on the WrestleWatch podcast.
absolutely.
So, if you wouldn't mind,
I would love to. So, for those of you who have never listened to the show before, um, this is the WrestleWatch podcast. We're the only weekly podcast where we discuss free agency, contract negotiations, and the overall landscape of talent and management dynamics in the world of professional wrestling. And what a week for that! You can follow us on the WrestleWatch YouTube channel where we stream the show live every week, or you could find us on your podcast catcher of choice. You could follow us on Blue Sky and X, where we post updates, including our meticulously curated WrestleWatch tier list, and on Substack for long form articles, where we analyze the likelihood of talents leaving, joining, and of course, jumping between various wrestling promotions with a special focus on WWE, AEW, New Japan, and Stardom.
yeah, so this has been an interesting week. And just for the people that are listening in on the podcast version of it, I'm popping up last week's tier list. You don't have to worry about it, of course, because it's going to be gone in a moment. This week has been an interesting week because of well, I suppose that we're going to be starting this week about the perception of AEW. That's something that Doug, you wanted to talk about, and it is tied to also who the first talent that we're going to be talking about today is Rey Fenix, who's had a I'm not sure what's going on kind of week here. but
Let's call it a memorable 24 hours. We'll put it that way.
it's certainly been every 24 hours a new cycle starts with him. We're gonna tease that out. We're gonna get to that in a moment. First off, we're gonna talk about some stuff about the perception of AEW and as it relates to free agency of professional wrestling. Doug, if you want to take it away.
Yeah. So I wanted to have a little discussion about, as we said, the perception and the fan perception of AEW as it exists currently. And I want to start with a caveat that, on the show, we don't generally review shows. We might sprinkle in how we feel about shows and how we think things are creatively and stuff like that. Um, but that's not where I'm going with this. In fact, I'm going to approach this not being critical of AEW from a creative standpoint or say what they need to fix or anything. I'm not going to do any of that because I don't think that's relevant to what I'm trying to talk about. What I am trying to talk about, though, is the perception that AEW has right now. And the perception is whether you like it, whether you don't like it, there's a perception that the promotion is rather cold. It's a cold promotion, and you can see that in ticket sales. You could see that in the current ratings. You could just see it in the general vibes that you get from the fan enthusiasm around the promotion. It's not the same as it once was. I think there's a lot of things you can attribute to that that are beyond creative. I think the biggest thing is WWE having found a fan base and having a product that the fan base generally likes and is not critical of. I think that's contributed. I think that you could definitely argue that Brawl Out had an impact on it. That's part of it as well. And then also, I think it's just in general, um, AEW isn't exactly what it was anymore. It is no longer the fledgling startup company that it once was. It's now in a situation where it is, making $170 million a year in guaranteed money. That's That's a massive difference from where it was when it was, on a time buy and potentially just trying to recapture the magic of All In, the first All In, where it wasn't even where it was a 10,000 seat arena that people considered a massive success. And even now, they're still, and that's something they could still do now. They could do 10,000 in certain situations, and they're still considered cold, and that's fine. But I do think that perception of the promotion is having a is down. And I think that that's trickling down to talent, and that's what we talk about on this show is talent relations between management and labor, and who's likely to go to which promotion. One of the things that I had said since the beginning of this podcast, and earlier than that even, and it was almost a mantra that I kind of stuck to when it came to AEW and WWE, and that was that 90% of all talent negotiations and contracts are going to come down to whether or not they're getting paid the most. They'll go with whoever's the highest bidder. They're hired guns 90% of the time. I think that that's still the case in most situations. I definitely don't think it's 90% anymore. That's at least from people who are willing to go to AEW. I think that there was this idea of it being the cool hot commodity, and I just don't think it's that anymore. I think that it's a situation now where if all things are equal, they're going to want to go to WWE, and in situations where maybe things aren't exactly equal, maybe they'll get a little less, but they still might go to WWE. I think that a good example of that is like looking at the Bryan Danielsons, where he came in,
Yeah.
and he was like, I was really happy in WWE, but I left, and I remember that first night he talked about how the fans are incredible, how this is good for good for the industry. It was a very altruistic way he was coming about it.
Mhm.
I don't know that there's anyone like that anymore. And I say this on the wake of the end of the Magnificent Seven, which is what I kind of started this whole podcast with, where I was breaking down. These are 7 WWE talents that I could totally see making a jump to AEW. Not saying they were going to or even likely to, but I could see it happening and having a solid impact. And none of them went. And when we look at it now, I don't know that I necessarily see any major jumps on the horizon that would be a big difference.
Yeah.
And then I think I think that has partly to do with the perception of AEW.
Mhm.
And I think I'm not sure exactly what it is, and maybe we can have that discussion another day, because I think there's a lot more to it. Or if someone has thoughts they want to bring up, but especially when you look at AEW pre-Sting retirement and post-Sting retirement, or pre-Mercedes Moné coming in at big business and post that, it feels like the second half of this year has just been very odd,
Mhm.
to say the least. And I think that going forward, I think it's going to hurt AEW's ability to get talent in a way that I don't think it should, though. Because when you look at the talent that are jumping and are doing well in AEW right now, or in WWE right now, by and large, it's talent that came from AEW.
Mhm.
Like you look at CM Punk, you look at Cody Rhodes. Those are probably the top 2 stars in the company.
Yeah.
And if you look at other people who potentially are going to be going soon, they're big name talent that made themselves big in AEW. So is AEW becoming a new feeder? I think is the question that I want to ask.
Well, I think that certainly there is a factor of when people get featured on AEW programming that WWE get their eyes widened a little bit. We saw that this year with Stephanie Beckor, to be sure. Luke, what are your thoughts on about all of this?
I think I'll start off by just kind of answering the question at the very end that Doug had. I'm gonna say no, that I don't consider them I guess a quote unquote feeder to WWE now, so long as AEW is able to offer competitive money that WWE can have, as long as that the money can stay competitive between talent, I don't think you can. I don't think I would be able to consider that a feeder. It's just a second option. It's just another option. It's definitely an alternative. It's what we're seeing. I think is AEW really, really entrenching themselves in the we are an alternative format. You generally when they were starting up, it was about being an alternative in style. Now it's just the alternative in just having another option of a wrestling company.
Mhm.
It's not so much of it. It's not so much like a what's the word I'm looking for? It's not so much
I well, I know what you're saying. They're
Upstart.
they're stylistically not that different.
not anymore. Not anymore.
No.
They used to be, but now that as it's come just a little bit closer to WWE, not just in the way that it presents the product on TV, but the way they kind of handle business now. I mean, what was it earlier this year, I think it was earlier this year? They just had the first round of cuts, which they had never done before in their
Yes,
five
that
year
was
history
this
at this
year.
point.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're kind of sort of doing business a little bit closer to what WWE is, and so it's not quite like you just said. It's not the fledgling anymore. It's been around for a little while. Um, I do believe. I also agree that it's feels like it's cold right now, but I think all of wrestling is kind of a little bit cold, except for main roster WWE. It just feels more amplified on
Mhm.
AEW because WWE has such a large footprint and just such large reach that when that feels hot, nothing else does.
Uh,
S That's what I think, at least.
interesting point with that part. There was only one wrestling show on national TV in the United States last month that went up in the demo and didn't go down in the demo year to year. Do you guys know which show that was?
I do because I remember you telling me about that. I
um,
saw it, so
do,
I know
do
the
you
answer.
do you know, Doug? Which
Mm,
of all the
Say,
of all of
say it
the
again. Yeah.
yeah, of all of the wrestling shows in the US that WWE and AEW do, only one of them went up in the demo year to year for November. Every single other one went down in the demo. Do you know what the one show was?
I'm gonna guess it was Raw.
It was Collision.
It was Collision.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um After the switch of SmackDown to USA, their ratings have not been great. And I don't know if it's what it is over in WWE, but like they've also had trouble with ticket sales recently. Ticket sales are starting to drag a little bit from previous performances for WWE. So it's not. I think that Luke kind of alluded to it a little bit. I think that wrestling in general is starting to have the swing back moment happen to it
Yep.
from being in a very hot period around 2021, 2022. I think that they're starting to have the slide back, generally speaking. Um, I think that if you look at AEW, I think that going into the new year, they have a very good position with the um, I will call it Wrestle Kingdom season, with World's End, with the Stardom shows, with the Tokyo Dome shows, everything all together. I'm just looking at it as one season ending matter because it's the Intercontinental Classic, it's the start of new things in Japan, it's the end of things in Japan also. It's a very interesting time that they could tap into with the Max deal also starting during that week. At the same time, though, of course, Netflix deal starts with Raw on the 1st of January as well, or not just with Raw, with everything for WWE, depending on where you live. Um, so I think that it could be a transitionary moment. There seems to be some sliding, I think, with wrestling in general right now, but I think that depending on how these new streaming deals for both companies that are coming up in January happen, that could change things. I do recall also from today's All In press conferences, Bobby Lashley was really harping on the fact that he loved having AEW was an alternative place to do the creative things that he couldn't do in WWE. But he was also saying that he wished that there were like 5 or 6 companies in the US that were viable as alternative companies to each other. Um, and it's just not the case anymore with that, obviously. AEW has kind of positioned itself as like a thing that just exists at this point. It is a challenger brand, yes, but it's not an upstart anymore. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, and that's something that
And they're still negotiating with Fox.
yes,
Yeah.
they're still negotiating with Fox on top of that. And so that's something that you mentioned, Doug, with talking about Bryan Danielson, was he referenced today when he was at the All In press conference things that happened today. He was also mentioning about how he is really excited to be there still, doing backstage stuff even into the future. So it's really interesting to see the dynamics at play with AEW trying to figure out where it is in the landscape now that they've kind of gotten the whole like, oh, we're the flashy new thing moment that is past now. Now it is, we are the alternative, and we are like a constant brand. We are a thing that exists. You don't have to worry about it not existing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the honeymoon's over.
The honeymoon's over. It's a Pepsi now. It's a solidified Pepsi now.
And I want to circle it back right back around to the free agency aspect of this too. The way I want to kind of frame this as is, the answer could also be just pretty simple as to going back to the Magnificent Seven. It looks like all seven of them are going to be going back to WWE. I know three of them haven't technically re-signed yet.
Yeah. So
but they might as well be. Well, go on.
Yeah, just to so people have the names on their noggins. The Magnificent Seven were Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Finn Balor, AJ Styles, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Sheamus. Four of those have re-signed with WWE this year, even. The other three are all on the tier list. That is AJ Styles, Kevin Owens down in safe stay, and Sami Zayn is one tier up in likely stay.
But by all accounts, they don't seem to have any sort of indication that they're going to be leaving. Which, okay, I think it's just as simple as they're also WWE also happened to be in the year where they benefited from a hot period, because the year of 2024, it was just record breaking sales. You saw how many times that they boasted that they had the highest grossing show at this location. How many times did that happen at certain shows and certain PLEs or pay-per-views or whatever throughout this year? So they benefited from a hot period. They also happen to benefit from the fact that those seven pretty dang important people that could have impacted in a positive way AEW all happen to be and up and ready to go during the hot period. I just think that there's a pretty significant difference between showing up to work in front of 10,000 people and a really hot crowd than 3,500 people. 3,500 people is still really dang good for AEW. That's still solid. It's just not the limelight and in a very, I guess, macro sort of level, especially compared to WWE. So I think it was also just a benefit of circumstance that the hottest period that WWE's had in a long time benefited where a lot of their important talent were coming up in the same year, and they just benefited from it.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see what the landscape looks like, a year or two from now, because as Ryan said, we are starting to see some softening on WWE ticket sales, and as we saw with AEW, that's usually the first indicator. And after that, after you start seeing ticket sales soften up, you start seeing ratings soften, and then you start seeing the enthusiasm overall soften, and then you gotta wait till it heats up again. They catch fire on someone, and I just don't. I think I think when we're talking about just wrestling being cold in general,
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on here, because I think in AEW and WWE, I don't know that they necessarily have anyone who's going to really catch fire. WWE has Cody, and I think they've kind of told his story. I think that's over now.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that there isn't a whole lot of interest in his title reign from where it was when he was in the chase.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't think that there's a whole lot of interest in the rehashing of a lot of the storylines they've been doing in WWE, and in AEW in general. It just feels like there's nothing that's really catching fire at all.
Well, and that's an interesting thing to point out there, because there was a tweet from Trevor Dame recently, I believe it was, that he was saying that right now AEW is on the precipice of, they could be on the precipice because they're excuse me, let me just restart this. AEW has a lot in common, he says, with WWE around 96, 97. And that the big thing that got WWF at the time to break out was Stone Cold Steve Austin breaking out as a character. And I think that, and this is getting a little bit into like the kind of like other territory that this podcast usually doesn't get into. But I think that the long term story that AEW is telling, and this is something that was kind of alluded to at the All In press conference today, was Darby Allin beating John Moxley and Darby Allin being the Austin guy, the guy. You know, he has like this, and it might be kind of a Sting guy, honestly, which makes sense, of course, because Darby feels like the kind of guy that is a perma face, but at the same time he does have a countercultural aspect to it, kind of like Austin. So I would be interested to see if that storyline takes off and grabs hold, especially with AEW getting the distribution deal with Max and seeing how all of that works, how much they promote AEW on Max, to see if maybe that Darby Allin might be the kind of a transcendental figure for AEW, like an Austin, a Rock, a Cena has been for WWE in the past.
Yeah. I think what's going to be important to keep track of too going forward is how do these companies adjust if they're going to start seeing some sort of dampening or some sort of softening in the sales, which AEW already kind of has. They've already been in that sort of realm for I guess most of the second half of this year. I'll go ahead and at least be generous with that. Well, the Intuit Dome show. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Intuit Dome, right, for the
Yeah,
LA show.
that's the
The Netflix one?
Netflix that's the Netflix first show.
Yeah,
Yes.
the cheapest ticket right now is $200.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
It's ridiculous. So the ticket price is going to be pretty high. We're also getting into a new administration, and inflation is going back up and stuff. So what I'm keeping track of is where are there going to be the adjustments to be made for AW and WWE. AW, you're already kind of seeing it. I remember hearing in the press conference for it was the post show press conference where Tony Khan at Full Gear he was gushing about the HEB Center in Austin
yeah.
because he said, and I quote, well, not a quote, but he said over and over again that it was the perfect size for doing everything that they wanted to do. With that AEW wanted to do, and it made everything sound great, made everything look great, exactly what AEW wanted. For the longest time, I was more of like hey, just stay the course, trust the process with the arenas that they're running. After hearing that, I'm like, actually, it kind of sounds like Tony Khan kind of wants to run those smaller things. He actively wants to seek those out because he thinks it could be good for the vibe for the show. Okay, that's an adjustment. Let's see how that turns things around when can hear slightly more enthusiastic crowds, making it a little more full. Okay, that's cool. Right now, no, right now WWE is not quite there at the adjustment period, but I suspect that might need to be in like where ticket prices are because what was a report that came out earlier today where I think it was Shapiro from TKO said that they may look at doing 2 night PLEs
Yes.
across the
Yes.
board. And okay, right now that probably sounds like a really good idea. How about in about maybe 2 years, when we're 2 years into this administration, who knows what's going to happen? What kind of shape the economy is going to be in? Are you sure that that's going to still be viable in 2 years from now? When at the very least the first SummerSlam is going to go to 2 nights.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm going to be keeping track of is how do they adjust, basically, both companies.
Yeah, and that's something that we have TC here in the chat mentioning. It's that
Yeah.
it's weird that AEW, by all metrics, has been wildly successful, and yet they're still dealing with all these growing pains. And it was mentioned, of course, by Dave. It was by Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling
Yes, he
Observer
was the one that brought
Radio.
that up about the cold thing, about the cold part of
Yeah,
everybody except
which
for WWE. Yeah.
which is funny because it's like it's Collision is the only show that's actually not gold in the entirety of pro wrestling.
Well, if you want to get more specific, I'm taking this from a comment that I saw on Reddit, and they actually were pretty correct too. The only companies that are not really cold right now are like, first on a grand scheme of things, not just shows, just the companies are WWE and CMLL, which is still packing
Oh,
17,000 people in Arena Mexico
wow.
weekly.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
they're the only ones that are not cold.
And TC also mentioned how the collision this week at the GalaxyCon was pretty great, which makes sense because, yeah, it kind of feeds into what you were saying, Luke, about maybe like the whole you were like saying about trusting the process, about where they're going with things, and maybe going to other kinds of venues won't be, it might seem perception wise as a negative, but in reality, it will cause a positive to happen for building a better brand.
Yeah, like the cynic point of it is okay. They're conceding; they need to make changes. I think the positive way you can take that is well, they're going to adjust and they're going to see it. It could be a long play for trying to reverse the perception where if you're getting into an arena that's maybe max 9,000 people in a concert setting or something,
Hmm.
then they're going to be loud and enthusiastic because the AEW crowds are still pretty hot for the AEW crowds that show up there. They're still pretty hot for the product itself.
Yeah.
So they just gotta pack it in there.
Yeah, so I think that this is something interesting to keep an eye on about the perception issues, but I just wanted to roll back over to Doug here. So, do you think that you're going to be changing your criterion that you're going to be looking at? Your 90% of the time it comes down to money. What do you think are going to be the big factor points now? If you were to bullet point what the other factors other than money are going to be coming
I
up here?
I think that here's how, let me read it. Let me kind of clarify this. When I think about talent that are going from WWE to AEW, we saw a lot of situations where there was top talent leaving WWE and going to AEW because it was a hot product. They wanted to be creatively fulfilled, and you know, and then obviously having money helps too, but that wasn't necessarily their main focus. Um, I don't know that we're going to see a lot of main event WWE talent suddenly jump over to AEW in the near future. The people I do see jumping over from WWE to AEW are people like the Ricochets, who are just mid card talent that aren't being utilized, or maybe any other talent that's not really being utilized,
Yeah,
and who are trying to kind of break out and are willing to take a bit of a pay cut.
yeah.
And then in terms of if there are talent that are going to go, it's still going to be about money. But I think that because of that, I don't see people going. I don't know. I want to
think
see how WWE is going to kind
yeah.
of pay going forward, because I think that we haven't necessarily seen uh, how WWE I mean, we've seen a little bit, but if they're going to start really paying out big money, which they might be doing now, I thought for a while they maybe wouldn't, but it seems like they're paying pretty handsomely.
Yeah.
So I don't know that necessarily money is going to be the biggest thing anymore if everyone's throwing money around, and it's not necessarily, after you get to a certain point, maybe it doesn't matter as much anymore.
I think that a common thread that I see with a few of the folks that we've kind of alluded to during this discussion, or we've alluded to Bryan Danielson, we've alluded to Bobby Lashley as well, and you just there to Ricochet, is a lot of their decision making has come down to I'll phrase it as the art. It's not necessarily about just the money for them. AEW is a place where they can develop what story they want to, and get featured in a way that they want to be featured. And for Bryan Danielson, also, his factor is supporting the scene and supporting the continuation of the scene moving forward. And I think that not everybody is signs up for that. Like the rah rah, like the classic Dax Harwood promo of rah rah, I love this place, all those kinds of things. Like, I don't think everybody is built like that and with that kind of heart behind it. And it's not a negative thing necessarily, but it's just like I think that could be a thing to consider when looking at talent and their chances of going to AEW. Is like you kind of have to buy into this thing and also possibly have something about yourself that you want to push, like with Bobby Lashley, where like they were not getting that opportunity in WWE to express themselves the way they wanted to.
Yeah,
And just
I,
to
I
oh,
agree.
no, go on.
I was just going to agree with that. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it is just, um, yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I have nothing else to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to take one little quick note to go back to what TC says in the chat right at the very end, because I think it's an important little, if nothing else, maybe like a little caveat or an asterisk of sorts to Ricochet jumping over. That was a big deal because Ricochet actively chose to move away from the 10,000 people plus crowds to try something different and go somewhere else in AEW. Great. But he says Ricochet got peer pressured. I also think that means think that means that Ricochet was also a unique case to jumping from WWE to AEW, who was not very high, but also not very low on the card,
Yeah.
because he had outside people. He turns out he's a person who had outside friends from outside the company that could possibly influence his decision.
Yeah.
So even then, Ricochet jumping, there's still a caveat to him jumping in the first place.
I think that that's an interesting thing to think about when we think about people like Sami Zayn or Kevin Owens, where it's like they do have that, to put it bluntly, peer pressure aspect possibly to them, but at the same time, they are much higher on the card in WWE than Ricochet ever got.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's put a cap in this conversation. We'll probably come back to it at the beginning of next year, maybe in February, once we see what's happening with all of these new deals for AEW and WWE with their streaming, to see if maybe the perception issues might shift or change for both companies, for that matter. But first off, for what we're looking at of who is up for vote this week on the tier list. The first one is, as we were referencing before, Rey Fenix. He was previously in the likely jump tier here on the WrestleWatch Pro Wrestling Free Agency tier list. The reason why we were bringing up this week originally was just because, well, there's been a lot going on with him, and we were just kind of doing a vibes check originally about the fact that, his contract is still supposed to lapse maybe within a year, maybe beyond a year because of the injury time thing, which seems to be a thing that AEW and WWE are both in agreement on of how they're going to handle injury time. He will be making an appearance with House of Glory in New York City during the same time that AEW and ROH will be at Hammerstein. So we had did this vote and we done this discussion prior to everything that has happened since then regarding Rey Fenix, which has been a lot of issue. It's I don't know if I'm as clued in as maybe one of the two of you are about all of the things that are going on Twitter with Rey, where he's posting a lot of vague tweets. But if either of you have a little bit of ear to ground about that, I would love for you guys to take over here.
So here's what I will say. First of all, in terms of this whole situation, I think it's funny that we all voted on this on Friday, and then this whole thing blows up this morning.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't really get a chance to factor that into our vote. So I think we need to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
First of all, I do agree. I don't have a problem necessarily holding talent to their contracts, as long as they're not doing it the other way. And typically, I'm not a fan of releasing people before their contract ends, but for the most part, AEW seems to, stand by their contracts. They did do that batch of releases, but we don't really know what the situation was there. It could be a thing where those are just pay per appearance deals, and maybe those are a little different. But with Rey Fenix, I thought that he was out the door before this whole thing happened this morning. I had him pegged to leave. I figured he was going to be gone. I mean, I know we already kind of had a likely jump, but I was going to vote. I voted safe jump. I thought that he's definitely out the door. And now he really is gone. And I think that it's unfortunate that this is going on, because this is interesting, because it's the second time that we've had this like medical complaints, because CM Punk complained that, he had to do everything by himself and no one was helping him. And now Rey Fenix is kind of saying that everything took forever as well. I don't, and I just, and this is just me kind of anecdotally kind of paying attention. When I do see an injury in WWE, I do see it like a report. Oh, they went under surgery the next day. I don't necessarily usually see that in AEW. It's usually like, oh, they'll be having surgery in next week or something like that. That's just a little anecdotal thing that I notice, but it does make me think that maybe there is something that they could be doing a little bit better at. But having said that, I have him at a safe jump. I think he's gone, and I've said that before.
Okay, Luke, how are you feeling about it?
Man, he did a really good job of making me look like a dummy in my vote. I'll tell
Oh,
you
what was your jump? What was your vote originally?
I have been pounding the table since the last time that we talked about the Lucha Brothers. I was pounding the table that Rey Fenix, he actually low confidence doesn't belong on the list because it's going to be too far out. It was purely a technicality, because I like to keep things like within perspective of if it's going to be like a year out, he doesn't need to camp on the tier list. Let's vote him off, and then when we get some more information and more updates, then we can put him back on. But he doesn't need to camp on the tier list. Let's take him off and do like that. So I actually voted for low confidence to take him off the tier list since it's gonna be so far. No, not anymore. After all this happened, and this is not just a burned bridge; it is scorched to godly. With all this, no, there's no way. There's no way that he's one ever come back to AEW TV, and two, I don't think he's ever gonna want to do anything Tony Khan related at all ever. So yeah, no, I will retroactively change my vote. He is a safe jump now. A part of me, part of that also is onto what Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful put in the long report about any type of update. This all okay. Let me back it up real quick.
Give it up.
This all broke like late Sunday night, right?
I thought it was this morning.
Was it this morning?
It started the cycle started on late Sunday.
Okay, so it was late Sunday night, but it was like late in the night. I'm pretty sure. I feel like I was watching college football when it was happening, no, I was watching the NFL when it was all dropping. So anyway, all this was happening, and then this morning, all this basically Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful, he said he was going to look into it. We got his report by like around 4 o'clock Central Time, my time, and it was more or less just an encapsulation of everything that he's heard. There wasn't anything totally new or totally different from what we've already heard throughout the day, but he did include a portion right at the very end, and I brought up as a quote. As of now, Phoenix's status is up in the air, and there were people within AEW that indicated to Fightful last week that AEW and Tony Khan might actually give Phoenix an early release on his deal. Before this week, before like Sunday, I didn't think that was going to be a thing. He's just going to be sitting at home and getting paid. Cool. Now, no. I think now there's a very real possibility they might let him out of his deal, and I don't know if it was to appease him or to do something for some legal perspective. I really don't know. But bottom line is, there is now a very real possibility he could be let out of his deal. I'm voting with the safe jump.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Can I just jump in, because I kind of want to say I disagree that this makes it more likely he's going to leave. I think it's more likely that he's going to be locked in this deal longer. Because I think we already had one situation with CM Punk where, the squeaky wheel got the grease. I don't think that they can start that precedence. I think it's like, if there was going to be a chance for him to get out of this deal, it had to happen like on good terms. Like he had to do it the William Regal way, if anything.
Yeah, I could go and do business on the way out at some point or some sort of like that. Okay, I can see it.
So it's like now it's like you can't let him go now, because now it's like every single person who wants to leave, it's like you've now said, okay, well, you either got to punch Jack Perry in the face or you need to go and throw a fit online. And it's like those are your two options.
Yeah,
just because the possibility has not been brought up. I didn't think it was going to be at all, but because of what Sean Ross Sapp said, that maybe they might toy with the idea, that's enough for me to say, you know what, I can't do low confidence anymore. Let's put him in the tier where burn bridges go, which is safe jump at this point.
It is in that zone where it's like I do understand your idea. It's a year out, and I do think that's kind of where I'm at. It's like I don't usually like to think more than a year, but he was kind of a significant one enough with all the news around him that I felt fine putting him on the tier list and talking about him.
Yeah, of course.
And I think he's a safe jump.
Yeah, he's a safe jump. Seriously.
Now,
Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, so there was actually something that just came across the wire a little bit. Well, it's a rumor. A rumor now is that Phoenix is going to make an allegation against the doctor for the reason for not being cleared.
That was included in the report that he may have had an issue with not being cleared by the AW Medical. That was also within the Sean Ross Sapp report. So now we got an even different, more specific rumor now.
Yeah, and so and specific about that part about the release part, it's that quote, there were people within AEW that indicated to Fightful last week. So this is before these tweets.
Okay.
That AEW and Tony Khan might actually give Phoenix an early release on his deal.
Man, this guy's confusing.
So, I think that if I was in Mr. Khan's shoes, Anthony, to use his full name, I think that I would kind of be like, yeah, keep floundering. Let's see what happens. Like just let him flounder for a little bit longer. The thing that also was pointed out in that Sean Ross Sapp piece is that Phoenix was under the presumption that WWE wanted both of them.
Yeah.
and
Okay.
WWE doesn't necessarily want both of them as a package.
I mean,
Because
I think it's
okay,
very obvious that Pentagon is way more valuable to WWE than Phoenix is.
Yeah.
he's just a more marketable person in general. Yeah.
So that might be why there is this kind of I don't know if the best way of putting it is lashing out uh that Phoenix is doing right now, because he's
It,
realizing like if he doesn't get out now, then maybe Penta will just I can't imagine that Penta would leave his brother like this. But
at its extreme, it reeks of desperation.
yeah.
I
So
don't. I also don't think that. Let's be honest. I don't think that AEW is gonna turn down Phoenix.
No, 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 no.
Like when he's eventually released and eventually out of his
you
contract.
mean WWE won't turn him down? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I don't think
Oh yeah,
WWE
yeah,
is gonna turn him down. Like
yeah.
he's going to, like, if even if there is like some truth to the idea that they really want Penta and they'll take it or leave it with Phoenix, it's like they'll take Phoenix.
Oh yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, but like Penta is like, and it's been said before, it's like Penta's shtick is like ready made for WWE.
Yes, it
Um,
absolutely is.
so before this all came around, my vote when we officially voted was to put him as a lean stay, and my reasoning why was that we're looking at something that is possibly going to happen in the next calendar year. So it's still within the purview of our tier list. The thing is, though, that when you're looking at something that's that far away, it reduces my certainty that it will definitely happen. And so that's why I was bringing him down a little bit, the tier list, into the lean stay region, because I think that there is still a chance at the end of the day, maybe something could change with the situation. Um, I think given everything that's happened since we voted, so over this weekend, I would probably put him as a likely jump still rather than a safe jump. Simply because like I like keeping safe jump as like the realm of like 1000% I know this person is like gone, signed, possibly we just have not like actually seen them on screen. That's my feeling about who I put in safe jump. And so like when we're looking at the people that are in safe jump right now, it's Hikuleo, Penta, and Speedball Mike Bailey at the current moment. Whereas likely jump is Oku, Phoenix, Jordan Grace, Ricky Starks, and Viva Van. I think that Phoenix, based off of the fact that he is not currently released from AEW, he currently is with AEW, technically speaking, that puts me still down one tier, down to likely jump rather than safe jump.
Okay.
Let me ask you this: if that's the case, then is your personal ceiling on Phoenix still likely jump? If you had to go as high as you possibly could, it would still be like likely jump.
I think right now, based off of just the letter of the contracts and everything, it would be likely jump is the ceiling right now.
Okay.
I think that if he were to be released, I would probably be like, well, I want to see one report of like definitiveness of him going to specifically WWE,
Okay. I got you.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I do. And I will say this: I think that with Ricky Starks having his kind of drama right now, there's. I do think WWE. I think AEW does need to figure something out to avoid this from happening in the future.
Yeah.
Whether it's have some type of clause in their contracts that you know you can't you can't go off online about like company
Non-defamation.
policies and things. Yeah, they probably need to start looking into this, because if this is going to become a reoccurring thing, this is something that uh that
I
they
yeah,
got
It
to
can't.
get
but
under
that's
control.
as somebody that's
This can that can damage AEW long term. Very much so.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's the thing. AEW is still they're an established company now,
Yeah.
but they still do not have like the decades long track record uh of the institution that is WWE, where
Yeah.
they're dug in deep.
Mhm.
Like AEW, you know, could be. I'm not saying they're going to be gone. Obviously, they're not going to be gone in like the next couple of years, but they're in a situation where they're not an institution.
No,
Like
gotcha.
Bellator, for example, they could be gone in a couple of years and we wouldn't know. I mean, they're kind of like Bellator.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah.
or they're kind of like the Pac-12. No.
Oh no, too soon. Way
Oh,
too
is
soon.
it too soon? I think it's. I think here's my hot take for the week. I'm just gonna say it. I think that NCAA football is the biggest bubble that there is in sports right now, and
Oh yeah,
that
it's not even close.
the college football playoff quote unquote controversy is really putting a big spotlight on the fact that like the SEC in particular thinks that they are something different from everybody else, and the reality of the situation is that they are at best AAA baseball. Like they are never going to be the major league. The major league is the NFL. So like what are they selling? You know, it's like the rivalries, the everything like that, and like the fun of now this playoff, and that we're gonna see like, oh yeah, schools like Clemson played in, school like ASU played in. It's cool, it's exciting, it's fun. Like that's the fun part of it, not you know Alabama losing to a 6-6 team. Anyway, that is a
There you go.
tangent, but the point is still it's that I think that yeah, AEW has is not at risk right now of dying any at all.
And let's be honest, they're not gonna die. But
No.
it's just a situation where, you know, they have a they're more risked to be damaged.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
That-
until Netflix's 5 years run up.
Mhm.
Anyway, let's look at what we're gonna put Rey Fenix. We're gonna leave him as a likely jump for the moment.
Okay.
all right. So who do we have next?
It is Miro. He is currently listed as a lean jump. The reason why we're bringing up Miro again is that he had requested his release from AEW a while back, and it's still not been granted. The last time we voted on him was October 27th. There has been no new news since that. With Miro, it doesn't seem like AEW is going to be granting his release, and his contract is still a while to go. So how are you guys feeling about Miro? I guess the kind of phrasing is staying on the tier list.
Well, based off of the fact that I think that AEW has gotten very, very firm on not releasing talent, especially after what happened today. I really think Phoenix is not going anywhere. I don't think he's getting out early, and I don't think I could be wrong, but I feel like that would be a bad move, just from an optic standpoint,
Mhm.
and the message you're sending. So based off that alone, I feel like even more today, it's less likely he's going anywhere
Mhm.
anytime soon. So because of that, I think, and as we said, it's gonna be a while because he re-signed not that long ago,
Yeah.
and he's under contract for a bit.
I think it's
probably over
2027 or 26. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
long contract. So I'm kind of in the stance of where it's like that's such a long time, and I don't
Yeah.
see anything telling me that he could potentially be released. So because of that, I don't think he needs to be on the tier list right now, and I said no confidence.
This is an interesting thing I just wanted to bring up because it relates to our first segment there. He is definitely the kind of person that, relatively speaking, looking at 2024, it's a lot of people that have signed with AEW or stuck with AEW that are there for quote unquote for the art. And he is part of a wave of people that signed with AEW that might not have been there for quote unquote the art.
Oh yeah, he was in the Malachi Black class. They left because it was the COVID cuts.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyone in those COVID cuts, yeah, that was I think a big message that Tony Khan should have gotten to going forward. That be very wary of people who just left, who would rather be at WWE and are just there because that's the best option.
Yeah.
And it's why I was kind of weary about question the idea of bringing in the Hurt Syndicate because I wasn't necessarily sure and sold on that they really, really wanted to be there. But they seem to be pretty into it. So,
yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, I think that at the very least, Bobby Lashley's stance is that he wants alternatives plural. So even if he doesn't necessarily want to be in specifically AEW, he wants alternatives to exist, but also that AEW is the best, biggest spot alternative for him to tell the story that he wants to tell.
Yes.
So he's signed up 100% with AEW, but it's not because of specifically AEW necessarily.
Yeah. They're a unique situation where they were cuts for them, but they were also trying to look for that
Well,
creative fulfillment
yeah,
of sorts.
Shelton was a cut, and Bobby
Yes, Shelton was a cut.
left.
You're correct.
Bobby just
Yes,
left.
and so did MVP along with them as well.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but they were already seeking out some sort of creative fulfillment because
Yeah.
they just flat out weren't being used.
Yes, yeah, they weren't being used, and they also weren't being used in the way that they wanted to be used, and they
pretty much.
saw, and I think that I think that it's going to be very interesting to see the direction that the Swerve Hurt story moves forward. I think that is. I mentioned it earlier, and I think it was you actually, Luke, that said like, "Oh, that's pretty far away." I think that is going to be a marquee match for All In, is Swerve versus Bobby. I think that's a long-term storyline that they're playing at. So sorry to get tangential with this. We're talking about Miro here. Luke, where are you thinking about Miro?
Luckily, this one is pretty cut and dry to me. He's he requested his release. Tony Khan said no. His contract is not for another minimum 2 years. He doesn't need to be on the list. Like in complete contrast to Rey Fenix, he has not he's not kicked up any dust. He's not burned any bridges. He's not done anything like that. It's just he's not being used. He's wanted to be released. I guess Tony Khan kind of wants to start setting that precedent of you signed a contract with me, you re-sign with a contract with me, you're going to be sticking around here until I decide I want to use you or not, really. And because of that, it looks like right now it doesn't seem like TK has any real plans to use him for right now. So I can definitely see that extending out for the rest of his contract until it's done, or maybe he gets an early release, maybe sometime next year when this whole, I guess, perception has kind of died down just a little bit, maybe. But I wouldn't bet on that really. Bottom line is, 2 years out, he's not going to be used. I voted for low confidence.
Yeah, so that last bit there, like, well, there was still a chance. That's why I voted for him as a safe stay. Still, I was my thought process is that at the time at least there is still a chance for him to get released early.
Yes, there's a chance, but we've heard nothing indicating as such. We've heard more about Rey Fenix possibly getting let go before Miro has. So that's the reason why I was like, nah, low confidence.
Yeah, and so I think that the interesting thing there is that we've heard nothing, which is like putting him in a better position, I think, possibly than your Danhausen's or Rey Fenixes of the world.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And I will say this: there is maybe the argument that Tony Khan wants to send the message, that that he's doing it the right way. He's not throwing up a stink. He's asking politely to leave. He's being very quiet about it. And maybe TK does want to send a message that, hey, if you do business the right way and you don't throw a stink, and there are situations where I will release you.
Well, yeah,
so that's the Andrade.
And something that I've also pointed out.
Andrade. Well, Andrade did. I think Andrade's contract wearing out.
It was that he had an option and they agreed to not take it up, I believe.
Because his business was the way out. Because
what they kind of did with Cody. What they did with Cody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, yes.
And so what I'm seeing also with Danhausen and Ricky Starks right now also is that Tony Khan has been open to them taking bookings with anybody that they want that conflict with AEW bookings, because he understands that, like, well, if you're gonna go on the way out, like, I'm not going to release you from your contract because I know what's going to happen if I do that, Yeah.
Yes.
But if you guys are being nice and playing ball with this, like, yeah, you guys can take other bookings. I'm not going to say no to you because we have Collision on this night, Like, I'm not going to use you. We're chill.
He's trying to avoid a Rick Rude situation, which I appreciate. I can respect that. It's like, if he doesn't want someone going straight from AEW to Monday Night Raw in the span of a week.
Well,
like he wants someone like Ricky Starks. He'll take him off TV for a year, kind of cool him off, which maybe you don't like. Maybe Ricky's not happy about that, but hey, you're under contract, you're getting paid. You could do your own thing outside of AEW, but he's not gonna build you up just to jump to the other company.
Well, and on top of that, Ricky was at Full Gear backstage, so it's like obviously they're not like. It's not deathly a bad situation there.
Yeah, no. Apparently, they're just perfectly chill with each other. They're just, their roads are diverging, is what it is. Really.
Yeah, and also for that matter, because of, I believe both of them are all elite graphic people, they have guaranteed money. So Tony is paying them guaranteed money every single week to sit at home and do nothing. And he's saying, yeah, sure, you guys can take other bookings. Yeah, sure, you can do it on top. Like, it's not like it's like the tier 0, tier 1 people if he's like refusing them to take other bookings at the same time and he's only paying them pay per appearance, you know?
Yeah,
But anyway, point is Miro is off the list.
yeah,
Low
that's about right.
confidence.
That's
Yep.
about right.
Next up is Becky Lynch here. The photo that you guys are seeing, if you're on the YouTubes, is her obviously just supporting her husband at the
Oh my goodness.
Netflix. It was a corporate like press event, so it was like Variety and Hollywood Reporter and things like that. It was a private press event rather than a public press conference that they did with Netflix, WWE, and Netflix. You have like Nick Khan there, Triple H. Mr. Brooks is back there, Mr. Punk himself. But the talent, all that were there, were Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, the Miz, Rey Fenix, Rhea Ripley, Seth Rollins, and Becky Lynch. So, how are we feeling about the thing about this? Of course, is that Becky has not announced that she has re-signed with WWE. WWE has not announced that she is re-signed with them. The last reports that we've been seeing is that WWE is expecting her to come back. Even Netflix seemed much more assured that she would be back. But the caveat, of course, is that this is Netflix is globally getting essentially the network of WWE, which might explain why somebody like the Miz or Rey Mysterio are there a little bit more because they're not as prominent on screen today in WWE. So let's start with Luke on this one. How are you feeling about Becky Lynch staying on the tier list? Because I also know that we had a little bit of discussion this week of trying to compare and contrast Becky Lynch being on the tier list still versus Bryan Danielson not being on the tier list.
So, okay. So, there's a couple of things that kind of go through my head, and let me try and see if I can lay it all out. So, one, Becky's is a bit of a weird situation because she flat out said she's taking a break, or it was announced or reported that she's taking a break, and she was taking a break without a contract. So she's technically an unsigned talent, which would make her a free agent. Even then, I didn't see her throughout this entire time. I didn't see her likelihood of jumping to be very high. Just in general, she's been with the company for God knows how long at this point, and with all the history there, with all the history, her husband there, I didn't really, and also she had a run with the NXT title. It sounds like she has at least some sort of interest in developing the younger talent, which in the past has been a factor in some talent in WWE staying with the company. Um, that aside, there's also not really a hard and fast rule about a safe stay to a confirmed stay jump in contrast to safe jump, confirmed jump. Confirmed jump, we like to make sure we kind of have an unwritten rule in that we like to see them debut on the new promotion before we decide to vote them off and say, hey, let's evaluate how we did. Cool. That doesn't really exist for safe stay to confirm stay. We don't really have a hard and fast, okay, how do we gauge whether this person should needs to be removed from the list because she's definitely re-signed or they're definitely staying versus do we want to see some evidence that they are actually there for the long haul? Do we wait for that return to TV? There's not really that when it comes to the voting process of it. So at the end of the day, I just stripped it all down and I just thought about, okay, do I really think that she was going to be leaving? Frankly, no, I don't. And I don't ever really think that it was very high of her chances to be leaving. So with that in mind, I just voted her to safe stay because I
Okay.
don't, and I voted her to safe stay, not confirm stay, just set to remove.
Okay, so
I,
you want her to get removed. Doug, what are your thoughts?
I said safe stay.
Yes, I said
Um,
safe stay. Yeah.
yeah. So we both said safe stay.
Okay.
Yes.
I here in kind of going back for the same reasons. I think that she's going to be sticking around. She'll come back eventually, and the reason I think it's one of the reasons that I think it's different from Danielson. Um, Danielson has basically already said that he's never signing another contract again for the rest of his life, and I think that Becky, quite the opposite. I'm very confident that she will be signing another contract, and I think it'll be fairly soon. So that's why I think one can go on the list and the other one can't. Bryan Danielson, I think, is going to be free agent for life from now on. I don't think I agree. He said he's never signing another contract. I believe him.
Yeah, and today, like of course, this discussion started before the All In press conference today, where Bryan Danielson surprisingly returned to AEW for the first time. I mean, it's not exactly show, but he returned to AEW for the first time. He consistently was using the word "we" to talk about AEW. He was talking a lot about business stuff about AEW when he was interviewed by outlets on the side. And also it was mentioned he was saying, I don't know if I will be able to wrestle at all, but I will be there. Whatever Tony wants me to do, even if it's anything backstage, I will do it. I think that I remember that there were reports after Wrestle Dream, specifically from Fightful, that were saying that there was an expectation within AEW for him to return to do backstage work once he's feeling up for it. And I think that Brian was kind of being coy in public today about what his role with AEW will be going forward. It seems that he does already have some kind of backstage role that he will be developing into the future with AEW. And that was something that we knew about immediately after Wrestle Dream, was that Danielson's probably going to be backstage at AEW. He's probably not going to WWE. He's said specifically on multiple interviews, I'm not going to WWE. And he described it in a way that was like, it is the antithesis of what he wanted to do with wrestling and what he wanted to promote at this time. Not that he doesn't like WWE as its own thing, he just wanted to promote the alternative as much as he can for the health of the industry. Becky has, on multiple occasions, talked about how she wants to get the bag and get her worth out of things. She has been pretty vehement, I think, in this time that she's been a free agent, for this entire time. So I think that there was a window for AEW to step in. I think that the window is very, very, very narrow right now. I think that is the kind of thing where it's like, you get reminded by your energy audit for your home that just because you've shut the window, it doesn't mean that it's a pure seal yet unless you lock it. I think that's around where we are with Becky Lynch right now. I don't think that it's a locked deal yet, but I think that it's pretty safe to say that she is staying at WWE, and that's why I feel like we should keep her at safe stay rather than taking her off the tier list at this time.
What did the committee think?
Gonna keep her on for the moment.
Okay.
Keep her on at safe stay.
All right.
She's gonna show up at the Intuit Dome, and then
All
right, let's go.
I think that's gonna be the moment. If any moment for her to return is gonna be at the first Raw for Netflix. Yeah. And I think that this is the last one. If you guys could check me on making sure that I'm not saying something silly.
No, we got two more.
We got two more. So first up is Shinsuke Nakamura. I will try to hit this one a little bit quicker.
I don't think this one's gonna be. I don't think we have much to say on this one.
This one's interesting though, just because of the context of how Shinsuke won the U.S. title. Of course, there was a little bit of a boo-boo face from LA Knight, when he lost the U.S. title to Shinsuke at the Survivor Series event. It was also that he will be appearing at Pro Wrestling Noah's the New Year 2025 at Budokan Hall versus Oka Sasaki on the 1st of January coming up here, leading to some to speculate that maybe there could be just a quick switch of the belt to Shinsuke for the show. The same thing kind of happened with Speedball Mike Bailey with the X Division title for TNA. They put it on somebody else so that it would go on an NXT big show. There has not been any contract news about Nakamura since the last vote that we did, which was at the end of November. Our calculus has had his contract is already expiring. So, Doug, you said that this is an easy one. Where would you put Shinsuke at this point?
Nah, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think based off of what we've seen so far with him, he seems to be content. I think that's the best way to just describe him, and that's content. I don't know that AEW is necessarily going to be jumping to get Shinsuke Nakamura. I mean, he's we know how he is physically. He's basically in the same level of Tanahashi at this point. I I went likely stay. He was already at likely stay. I think he's fine where he's at. I'm not going all the way to safe stay. Obviously, there's always a chance that maybe he'll go back to Japan or do something like that. But I don't necessarily see it at the moment. He seems happy living in America and just popping over to Noah or whatever other Japanese promotion seems to be working with WWE at the moment. Seems content with that. So I'm going to say likely stay.
All right, Luke, how are you feeling?
I actually put him in also in likely stay as well. I didn't really see a whole lot. There wasn't a whole lot of news in the first place. The biggest news is that he actually came back to TV. Really, well, actually, not just came to TV. He actually looks like he has a bit of a gimmick change too. He has a bit of
Yeah,
a different look based on that image, and also they put the title on him
pretty
for the U.S.
immediately.
title.
Yeah.
Immediately as soon as he
His,
came back.
his
But
gimmick is Warhorse now.
oh, nice. so, I'm actually completely buying into the belief that they put the belt on him for the Noah show, and they're just going to give it right back to somebody else as soon as it's done, just so they can give it to him. I think that I'm thinking a little bit cynically, and I have a bit of a problem with that, but I can't help it. It seemed a little too blatant to me that was going to be like that. So, but besides that, there's still not a whole lot of news about his actual contract situation. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of news. There's no real update on that. So I actually prefer to just keep him in likely stay just to kind of keep him level. But this is something to keep an eye on because I wasn't expecting them to put the belt on
Mhm.
him, but now that they did, okay, let's see their circumstances after the Noah show and see what
Well,
happens. If they
yeah.
let him ride out a title, if they let him ride out a title run afterwards, okay, maybe I should probably move him down to safe stay or even confirm stay. No, no, safe stay. Let's wait until we get some sort of news about his contract. But still, I kept him in likely.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about that, of course, is that up until this point through this year, when his contract allegedly ran out in April, he just started only doing house shows for WWE International a lot of the time, either the Europe tour or the Japan tour that they did,
Mhm.
until just now he returned to TV and immediately won this title. So it's very weird how that happened. But I kind of agree with where the committee went on this one, which was moving him down one tier to safe stay. The reason why is that it just feels like the general trends of things with WWE is being able to keep and retain talent right now. So that's why I want to just move him down conservatively right now. And the committee is also feeling like just one tier down to safe stay.
Okay, so they voted safe stay. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. And then I need to step out the room momentarily. So if you guys want to talk Big E
Big
without
E!
me, I could jump in at the end.
All
Yeah,
right.
this is big talk for Big E, really. This was his return in ring, technically, to WWE. He appeared during a segment last week on Raw about the apparently it was the 10th anniversary of the New Day as a faction. Oh yes, it was. Um, he made his first appearance within a ring for WWE for the first time since March 2022 as part of an angle that kicked him out of the newly healed New Day. He did no physical activity and said he is not yet medically cleared. Reports came out this week that no injury time will be added to his contract for the time out due to the spinal injury that he sustained when he was working an NXT show. Uh, that would put his contract, which was a 5-year deal signed in 2019, as expiring at the end of this year. This has caused a lot of questioning about what's happening here. If it's going to set up a New Day triple threat, if there's something that is going to happen with Big E. There were reports saying that the original plan for this segment was that they were going to have Odyssey Jones join the New Day. And then WWE seems to have just cut ties with Odyssey anyway. So they decided to rebrand the segment, just have Big E get kicked out of the New Day. And it seems we don't know what's going to happen with him from here. So, Luke, what are your thoughts on Big E? Just also knowing, of course, that we have Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston as safe stays currently on the tier list.
So, okay, I'll start off by saying that I can't really tell if him saying he's not medically cleared, I can't tell if that's a work or not
Mm-hmm.
because I watched the segment and I watched it live when it was happening, and so the vibe that I got was that the way he was saying this stuff and the way they were setting, the way that Xavier and Kofi were um, targeting their insults to Biggie about him, about how he wasn't there for him, but he said, "I broke my neck." Yeah, that's not an excuse. That kind of doesn't sound like something that you would say if he wasn't cleared. So I'm actually kind of buying into that. He's pretty close to getting cleared if he's not just yet, and if he is not already, it's pretty close that he will be, because I don't think that they would be setting all this up just for him to retire into the sunset of some type. Well, then my mind went to, okay, let's say he does get cleared. Does that mean I see him jumping anywhere else, even with his contract? Frankly, I said no.
Hmm.
And I said no because he would either be WWE, because he has never left WWE's PLE. I guess their panels, pre-shows, post-shows, all like that.
Hmm.
He was completely involved in all that. He was completely involved in the marketing of WWE. They love this man, and it sounds like he loves them too. So with that being said, even if he were medically cleared, his only other option would be AEW, which I'm not 100% certain if he would, and I feel pretty confident he would never do New Japan.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, because of that, the fact that I don't see him leaving WWE, and the fact that I'm not even sure if he's medically cleared yet. I'm willing to say yes, maybe, but still not 100% sure. I actually decided to just keep him off the list because I don't really see him leaving anywhere. And if he were medically cleared, if he were not medically cleared, it's done. He's retired. Keep him off. If he is medically cleared, he's not leaving WWE. So I don't really see a point to putting him on there.
Yeah, so my take was that I was going to put him as safe stay because now we know that at least he's cleared enough to go inside a ring,
Yeah.
which is a big step because this entire time that he's been doing those panels that you were alluding to, he has not gone inside the ring, and that
Yeah.
is a thing for WWE.
There wasn't. You're right. There was no physicality in the segment, and I think the most that happened was Kofi put his like put his hand on Big E's chest and saying, "No, just
Yeah,
stay back" or something like that. That's
yeah,
probably the most that happened.
yeah. So technically there was physicality, but not that kind of physicality.
No, yeah,
Yeah. So I think that is a sign that he is going to be cleared soon or is cleared currently. Uh, and due to that, and due to the fact that their contracts are all up right now, and they say that they're not going to add injury time onto Big E's contract, um, which I think is due to him still appearing on screen for those panels, is why they're not going to add additional time. That's why I wanted to put him as a safe stay because like we know that their contracts are all up right now. And until I see something saying that they're all re-signed, I want to put all three of them on the tier list. That's my position.
no, I do understand that, and
Yeah.
I'm just way less. I'm more bearish on Big E's chances
Oh yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
coming
No,
back and of doing anything than Kofi and Woods is. I still think it's not a two out of the realm of possibility that the New Day may jump. I don't think it is, but I forgot where they are on the tier list. But bottom line is,
safe stay right now.
safe stay. That sounds about right. Well, I'm okay with waiting on them. For Big E, I'm not certain about it, but with more conversation, I could be convinced to just keeping him safe stay. But still,
Well, the committee agrees with you. They want to keep him not listed on the tier
okay,
list at the moment. So this is the.
I'm fine with that too, by the way.
Oh,
okay, nice.
great. Yeah. So what was that? Your take on it, Doug?
I don't have. I'll be honest. I'm probably not gonna. I don't have much take on Big E at this point, but I generally agree.
And for the record, we have the New Day, the other two New Day members, as actually likely stay, not as safe stay at the moment. Which I think we could probably look at next week, moving them down one tier. That would be my estimate on this. But I still think that it's intriguing that it seems that their contracts might be running out at the same time still, even with the big amount of time that Big E was out. So this is the current version of the WrestleWatch tier list. We will go around the horn and talk through every single tier that we have at the moment. Not a lot has changed this week in actuality, but still, let's go through it. We have Safe Jump, Hikaleo, Penta El Zero Miedo, Speedball, Mike Bailey.
All right, I'll do next. Likely Jump, we have Michael Oku, Rey Fenix, Jordan Grace, Ricky Starks, and Viva Van.
I'm up next. Okay, cool. Lean Jump, Zillifat2, Ninja Mac, friend of the pod, and Josh Alexander.
Toss Up, Danhausen, Megan Bain, Mina Shirakawa, and Beth Phoenix.
Lean Stay, we have Joe Hendry, Alex Windsor, Leon Slater, Samantha Irvin, Indy Hartwell, and Tegan Knox.
Likely stay, we have Sami Zayn, Tekla, AJ Styles, Mustafa Ali, Dragon Dia, Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, Mai Iwatani, and Dustin Rhodes.
And down in the safe stay, we have my girl Sari, Utami Hayashishida, Hook, Street Profits, El Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr., Becky Lynch, Giselle Shaw, Baron Corbin, Kevin Owens, and our boy, the Surfman himself, Shinsuke Nakamura.
All right. Well, that was a good show, everybody. Anything to finalize this?
I don't have any more thoughts. Do you have any thoughts, Luke?
I'm running dry on thoughts right now, buddy.
Well, I thank everybody for listening in to this week's episode of the WrestleWatch podcast. Of course, please follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky, on Substack as well. We have a little bit of an update we're going to post on our social media feed about how you all can be a little bit more involved with the podcast. We're going to put that out this week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, good night, mwah, and goodbye.